Okay, so I've been thinking about this thing about Norwegian unfriendliness and the debates going on about it on TikTok. I have been trying to figure out why this is. Now, I know I posted a lot of videos saying why I think people misunderstand it, but what I mean is why Norway? Why doesn't France or Britain or Germany have other areas that are arguably other white-ish? I mean, I know that's a myth in and of itself, and I don't like it when people say Norway is homogenous, because then they don't know anything about Norway today. But anyway, they have similar historical understandings of their racial composition. They're all in Northwestern Europe, and we don't hear people freaking out and calling those countries and cultures mean, which, as you know, I think is a very dangerous thing to say about any culture. Here's what I think. I was talking it over with a friend, and she made the very good point. She said, there's already stereotypes about Germany and France. We already have had what we thought about them. I'm a Victorian literature professor, so I would say arguably since World War I, when there was this sort of interaction among the different European nations. Before that, I mean, you would find people in British literature saying, oh, don't be so German, as an insult. But before, I would say the last 10 to 15 years, probably more like 10, really nobody ever heard of Norway. Actually, I noticed for most of my life that Norway would be like the punchline and jokes for the sole reason that it would make people laugh, that Norway would be the butt of any joke, because nobody really has an opinion about Norway. If you ever used to watch the Colbert Report before John Oliver became more famous, he would have a sign on behind him that said, these people are on notice. And that means like people that I'm giving one more chance before I really yell at them. And Norway was always on the board. He never actually did a sketch or a bit about Norway. The joke was just that Norway was on notice. And the whole joke was like, who thinks about Norway, right? So here's what I realized. It was in the last 7 years or so that, now this I really still don't know why, Norway started, and Scandinavia generally started getting all this publicity about being like the happiest cultures on earth with the highest quality of life. And so all of a sudden, and now because I'm living here in Texas, I've never really been to Norway, but I know all about Norwegian culture. I have a radar, like a spidey sense for when Norway is in the news, because it basically never was. And all of a sudden, I would say around 2013, 2014, it starts popping up in the news as being this like perfect utopia, which of course is simplistic and reductive to say of any country, okay? But what I realized, now wait, it took me a while, sorry. People are finally developing their first stereotypes of Norway and Scandinavia. The stereotypes hadn't really existed before because nobody really thought of these countries. And now people have heard about it thanks to the internet and such. And they're developing stereotypes based on, if you watch my other videos, that I think people basically assume they can just assume a bunch of stuff about Scandinavia, that they don't think they're actually like different cultures with things to learn. And so they get blindsided, they think people are rude. And then this is all in the cultural discourse, and people are talking about it because they are actively developing, the world is developing a stereotype for maybe the first time since the 1800s of what Norway is like. So what I would say is like, the videos where I talk about this are so popular and people are so vocal. Like, keep pushing. Right now, I believe, is when the stereotype of Norway is getting formed in the global perspective, and particularly in the American perspective. And the American perspective is so powerful, influencing the rest of the world. Like, keep saying something when people use these wrong terms and say things that feel incorrect to you, because I think there's a bigger shift in attitudes towards Scandinavia happening right now that we can shift before it gets really solidified.